We're live. Okay, clerk, call the roll, please.
Chair Mertzig,
Here.
Commissioner Livermore,
Here.
Commissioner Nickitobi, Commissioner Hartley,
Here.
Commissioner Boschnick,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So would you all identify yourself to the clerk, just so that we have your name on the record as being present? So,
Paul Capes.
yeah, thanks.
Frank O'Donnell.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Doria, you're first on our agenda. And we may be waiting for a document, so I think we're gonna move on and come back to you if that's okay. So you're here, so we also don't have Mr. Valenti here. So I think we'll move on to Mr. O'Donnell. Well, nice to have you here. You have two separate appeals. One of them is, in your appeal, you said,
Mr. Doria is here.
4-6.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Doria is here, first order of business.
I know,
Yes.
but he's waiting on a document.
Oh.
So we
Sorry.
are moving
Mr.
on,
Doria.
that's all right.
My apologies.
Wait, no, that's all right, that's how we started our meeting. That you actually had the work done prior to the date it was due. This is for 47 East Street.
Mhm.
Do you have documentation of that?
I asked the inspector to email to the court office, I believe they had, and I think he also forwarded.
Did you get an email from his?
No, I haven't. I don't know, what in particular are we talking about? Which
47
inspection?
East Street.
This is the
electrical.
electrical
The
inspection.
electrical inspection?
He did it for all three of my properties, and I was here prior to the day when he did do it, and then when I received the summons, I reached out to him to ask him to resend it to us, and he said he had done that, had his office send it to you guys.
It might be wise for us to table this one until we get the documentation, because if it was done, then we usually waive that even though it wasn't submitted. I mean, it is kind of your responsibility to
I
see
figured
that
it's
it's
all
actually
related,
was
yeah.
submitted. But that's one of the
I have an
options.
electrical inspection here. So from August of '24?
It was, yes, it would have been for 47 East Street.
Okay.
And then he did, I think he resubmitted the original email as well. when we
Right, so I have the inspection date from August 16th and the submission date of October 7th. That's when we received it.
Right, but it was due, September 29th. So legitimately, do you have a canceled check or anything like that?
I paid him cash, no,
Well, so you do have the electrical inspection with the date prior to the due date.
Yes. I have it completed prior to the due date.
Just not
submitted
submitted,
after.
right.
I don't think we need a canceled check if he got the inspection certification.
Are you willing to accept that and not, I mean,
Me
because
personally-
sometimes we see them post-dated or predated. You know, we didn't do anything wrong.
no. No,
Your inspector didn't file his paperwork.
Sounds like that, yes, I had an issue with that on another address before. It seemed like the same.
So,
I'd like to move we accept the appeal.
so do I have a second? Yes, thanks.
Appreciate that very much.
Chair Mertzig,
Yes.
Commissioner Livermore,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartley,
Yes.
Commissioner Boschnick. Passes.
Thank you. So that one, we're accepting your documentation. The next appeal, your next appeal for 162 River Street, kind of hard for us to think that you don't know anything about it if you have another rental property that you got your stuff in.
This was my first one, this was months beforehand, this is my first experience to any of this since then, when I was working on that, I was finding out everything else, and these guys have been great downstairs, they've taken all 10,000 of my questions and helped me through the other two, because I have 47 East Street, 11 Pearl Street as well. And those, other than that email not being received, I think we stayed up in front of all those and had no issues with those two. These two, this one was my learning curve for sure. I did do the electrical inspection on time, and that day it was due, I did stop in the office with the yellow and pink form on the smoke and heat detector alarm and the proper use certificate. I did speak with the code enforcement and hand them the forms. I know what day it was the day that was due, so that's how I remembered. I did speak with them afterwards, and they did remember me coming in, but we don't know where those forms were.
Gotta get to your part of it, right?
And the heating inspection and the
So-
housing inspection,
So your property use certification was due May 11th, and your smoke and heat detector was due April 11th. You usually stamp those when they come in. So we have your property use was dated September 9th.
I did resubmit both.
And so I don't understand, oh, because it was due in May.
Yeah. Well, that was a resubmitted, because that was when I started to find out that they didn't have those. I've been, to be honest, I came in this building once in the last 20 years, and that was to hand those papers in on that day. And then when I came back in and didn't have those, I brought it up, and they didn't recall me being here. I know it's not like a terrible excuse, but I knew it was that day that they were due. And I don't know I resubmitted then at that point.
I think the question is, the notification was sent out in May and you responded in September.
Well, that was the resubmission the initial one, I only did the electrical and then the two forms. I didn't do the heating or the.
Well, okay, so the heating, my point, you claim it's a resubmission, you failed to do the original.
Of the heating and.
Yes.
Yes, I didn't do the city inspection, I wasn't aware of. That was my not knowing, not being clear on everything I had to do before I was working with the code enforcement.
Normally you receive a letter from the city saying what's due. Did you receive that letter?
I did receive that letter, yes.
So,
And I did the electrical inspection, not understand, I guess it's not understanding is that the furnace inspection was something extra, and then,
we occasionally have this same problem, but your defense is, I didn't realize I was supposed to do it, even though the letter said.
correct, yeah.
It was due. And it's not like you were 2 days late, it was May, June, July, August, September.
That's when I received started to receive, I think, when I started working on the other ones possibly, I can't remember where I realized I was missing those, but it was when I was working on the other two houses. So I started working on those to make sure I wasn't missing anything, and that's when I was working with the code enforcement office to try to make sure the other two properties were 100%. And I was in a lot, asking them a lot of questions, but that's then trying to clear up the other ones. This was, I just.
You have to understand, from our standpoint, the reason for the fees is to make sure that you don't kind of forget or don't, that's why it's a stiff fee.
It's very, yes.
And no stiff fee, and all of a sudden we get lots of people, well, yeah, I didn't think about it, or I forgot about it. I understand, it sounds unfair to you, but it's also unfair to us to accept your appeal, well, gee, 4 months goes by and you still haven't submitted it because you just.
I was unaware, right.
Well, you were aware, you got a letter.
And that's why I started to come back in the code enforcement
Yeah.
work for them.
Yeah, I mean,
But I do want to make, because I did come in with those two papers for the heat and smoke detectors and the property certificate. I mean, I'd love to,
So his contention is that he brought the papers in and somehow they disappeared in our office. I mean, I don't recall interaction with him specifically, and papers don't generally just go missing.
Do you remember me coming in though? I thought we discussed you did, but you'd look again, but.
Yeah, I mean, we did our diligence to turn the office upside down to see if there had possibly been misplaced.
I mean, it was just, one, you just yourself in there when I handed them in, like, came in, there was nobody else in the office at the time.
Right, I don't specifically recall that.
I mean, I could've.
The number of times I've been in the office by myself, and
Yeah.
I can count on, I don't even actually recall that happening. There was almost always more than one of us in there, so.
Yeah, I don't know, so, that's on me, I guess, but,
Yeah,
I don't know, I mean,
You know, I don't know what to say here. We stamp things when they come in, and the property use form, which we have here, the green copy, apparently was signed by you in September of 2024. Yeah, we have your signature and, but that was what the fee was based on,
right,
is
that's what
that
we're working on the other two
date.
properties, and they said.
Right, I mean, those are the ones that you can do, so you don't have to rely on an inspection for that, that's your own
Right, yeah.
deal. That's what's kind of puzzling to us is, you know, if you brought the forms in, they would have a date that,
Well, there's no forms now, that's where I'm in trouble now. So, I mean, I know there's cameras here, so I know, I probably limit right down to day. So, I mean, they're in bright yellow and pink sheets, and that's gotta be something I can do. I mean, I know it sounds horrible, but the other ones are all my fault, and I had no idea what I was doing here. But I really know I came in right from my Road 60 River when the inspector was there. So I tried to hand them to him, he explained to me that the lad turned those in, so that's why I came here that day. And I said,
well,
"Well,
board,
I said,
what do you think?
Well, it doesn't sound like without any papers there's anything that we can do, is there?
You know, anything is possible, but they go, I mean, the amount of paperwork that comes into the code enforcement office is monumental.
Yeah, sure.
And, I personally would be willing to accept that the two forms that Mr. O'Donnell filled out himself could have been brought in, but we don't really have a date. You know, they could have been brought in before but we don't know what that is. The other two obviously are gonna stand, I think, because there isn't any, I mean, they still haven't been completed, so,
You wanna form a motion on that? You wanna form a motion?
you want me to put together a motion?
So we can.
I guess I have one more question for you, Mr. O'Donnell. Is this your first submittal of a property use certification on 162? 162 River
That's
Street?
my first,
Because that was where you were living,
correct. Originally, yes, I was living there, yes.
and when did you rent it out? I mean, how did we find out that you were renting it and not living there?
It's a duplex, so it was always a partially rental.
Oh, so even though you owned it, you had these forms in the past?
No, this is the first time I've had these.
When he bought the property, it had a valid property use form in place.
I
And
see.
it was sold as a COC property. It was in compliance to a degree. But yeah, unless we are notified of a change of ownership, we don't know who it belongs to. But I'm looking back here, and there was one submitted in 2019.
Here's what I found.
By the previous owner?
Let's see. When did you buy that property? 21?
6 years ago, yeah, 19 maybe. About 20 probably.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a property transfer letter mailed. Joe Schlafer mailed the letter potentially, to
Oh.
you. But we track them, but a lot of times we don't receive them back if a property is transferred until the county tells us.
So you have a copy of a letter that was sent to Mr. O'Donnell in 2019 saying,
What was the date on
Pull
the
it
letter?
back up.
I mean,
What's that?
Yes.
Maybe-
June 6, 2019, a property transfer letter went out, and it says, "We understand that this property has been sold. Please notify us of your information," basically. Submit a property use form. And like I said, I don't know what the percentage is of those people who do not respond, but it's common.
okay, so I don't see that we can base a decision on anything but what we actually have in front of us, which is the forms that you actually submitted that we have a date for. I mean,
Okay, well, is there, I mean, I can't, I mean, this obviously kill me, is there, I mean, there's cameras here, do I know the day, is there any way to look, I mean, this is $3,000, and I'm trying to, I did this, I know I did this, I mean, I'm not trying to make a horrible excuse, I still understand this, but I'm sure there's proof here somewhere, that I came in that day, so I mean, I know what day it wasn't like a broad range, it was the day the inspector was at River Street, and, because I remember trying to hand them to him, and he's like, no, I had to turn, he said, so I came here then, so it was like right to the wire, so.
let's table this and let him give us some documentation about when the inspector was there. If you have a date when the
We
inspector was there.
I have that for when the electrical inspector, submitted for 162.
Yeah, we'll just wait a month and you can come back and give us that documentation before we make a decision. Let's stand the two that are obviously not in compliance, which is the housing inspection, still hasn't done a housing inspection?
No, they did a housing inspection.
Everything's done.
Okay, and the heating inspection. Those are the two that are not,
Everything's done now. Just-
right, but it wasn't done by,
Correct, yes.
May.
Correct.
Okay, so I make a motion that we table, appeal property use certification and smoke and heat detectors, and let's stand and deny the appeal for heating and housing inspection on 162. Thank you.
Chair Mercer.
Further discussion, questions? Okay,
Chair Mercer.
yes.
Commissioner Livermore.
Yes.
Commissioner Hartley.
Yes.
Commissioner Boschnick.
Yes.
Okay, get us that.
Just when the electrical inspection was done on purpose.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is, and we had a couple people come in. Would you identify yourself, please?
My name is Dan Hunter, and I'm here on behalf of Joe Valetti, which is the
Oh,
number two
okay,
on there.
okay.
Apologize for
And
being late.
the other gentleman who's way back there?
Jeff Garrett. Jeff Garrett.
Oh, yeah, okay, great, thank you. There's agendas here on the, okay, good, got that, all right, great. We jumped over you, Mr. or whatever, because you weren't here, so we'll get back to you. So now we have, Mr. Garrett. So why don't you come out up front so we can hear you? I understand that we have a canceled check. I'm gonna pass this to the board members. Mr. Garrett claims, and we have some documentation to that account, that the inspection was done within the appropriate period of time, and here's his canceled check. Thank you for giving us that.
Not a problem. And then the documentation from the plumber was also dated before the due date.
So can I just put that on the record that it was not turned in and stamped by our office, but the due date?
It wasn't turned into your office?
Correct. So he has documentation that he had an inspection done, but the actual paperwork that we take in was not stamped or turned in by that.
This is an ongoing problem.
No, I know, so I just
With
want
our
to make sure on the
inspector,
record
yeah.
that
Right, and
we're acknowledging that we
we
did
did not,
not have this paperwork in our
error.
Correct, I'm not trying to point blame at anyone, I'm just saying, I thought the
No.
intent of the administrative fees was to make sure.
And the
it's done.
administrative fees were enacted to achieve compliance. And compliance means it gets done. So if it was done, we have the authority under the code to, this is for you to put in the record, to waive fees because it was actually complied with. So that's good, we're glad you have that documentation. In the future, it's your responsibility to let us know that something has been done, because we have no way of knowing that inspections have taken place or whatever. If you don't call the code enforcement office and say, I had the inspection today, and then we can make a record of it, or you can email them.
Okay.
That gives us documentation that if your inspector is late in getting it in, at least we have some kind of basis in which to not impose fees.
Correct. Oh, and I'm not saying it was anyone's fault, I have a.
Well, the person's fault was your inspector who didn't put the paperwork in.
Correct.
So there was fault here, it just wasn't us, and it
Correct.
wasn't you necessarily, except that next time you have an inspection done, please let us know, and then we have some documentation
Wait.
that it was done within the required time.
There's a problem. He is responsible to make sure the inspection paperwork gets processed. And we've had this same thing before. Well, they did the inspection, but the electrician didn't turn it in, and 3 years later, somebody discovers that, well, it wasn't turned in.
I mean, this is a big problem.
Well, I think the problem is we set a precedence, meaning, okay, it doesn't matter. The whole idea is to submit the forms. He gets a letter saying, you must show that you've done the inspection, and he didn't do it.
I don't-
He's responsible.
So
I don't disagree with you.
Just to be clear too, I mean, the certificates are good for 3 years, so at any point in that 3 years, you can get your next certificate going, right? I mean, it's not like, and then you get a letter, which gives you 60 days. So there is ample time to do the process, in my
I'm not in
opinion.
the business of punishing this young man, but
But
the problem is, if you set a precedent, what it means is, hey, I don't have to turn the inspection into the people. He gets a letter, says you must turn this in, and he trusted somebody, and that doesn't get him off the hook. It's his responsibility as the
It
person
is,
responsible
it
for the
is.
property. So, well, you said, well, you're not to blame. Well, he is to blame.
I
I'm not-
agree with you.
I'm not out after him and trying to make him feel bad, but my point is, I don't think we ought to set a precedence that everybody comes in and says, well, it was done, but I didn't want to turn the inspection thing in. They get a letter that says, please turn the inspection certificate in at a certain time. The electrician doesn't get the letter.
I agree with
He
you,
does.
but the fees are quite onerous. And the goal is compliance. And if we get compliance, then we can be forgiving. If we don't get compliance, then we can't be forgiving. I just think that if we take the position that the property owner,
Is
even though
responsible.
they don't get this certificate, are responsible for getting the certificate and getting it to us, I don't know. You can vote against this motion. My
Well,
motion
I
is to,
I wish there was something other than the full penalty. But we don't have the,
We can reduce it,
we can reduce it.
yeah.
I think maybe he had to pay a few $100s for the fact that he figured somebody else was gonna do his job. He owns the property.
If I may, I think what you're saying about the goals is very important. Because if you have a goal and objective, everything follows that pattern. And if the goal here is compliance, I totally agree with you. If there's compliance, then there's possibility to be forgiving. Because this is the public service board. We are serving the public. So anything to show empathy to the public is fundamental. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. The goal is what? compliance. And I would like to make a motion after yours to say if the board can set the criteria for what would be our guiding principle or criteria for setting kind of, of course, being a public thing, it will be complex, we can't get everything. But so far, issues like this that are complex, that keep coming up again, we would be like, 1, 2, 3, how do we forgive an entire penalty, or how do we make it 50-50, or how do we say, no, you're not forgiven? And these are the things, the criteria you must meet. Number one, what is the goal? The goal is very important. If our goal is compliance, and I think that should be it, he has a property, and I think you should let it go. And then next time this happens, he's on the books, we don't forgive.
I see the goal is to, we're trying to make the property owner responsible for his property and do his duty to help the city make sure that his property is not endangering the public. That's the goal.
That's your goal. This is our goal. So let us agree on the goal.
Well,
Let's
so-
all
so-
agree on what the goal is.
So the code
Well, let's all
says-
agree on my
Sure,
goal.
wait a minute.
If we agree on the
code
goal,
says-
it will help.
The code says what authority you have to forbid, or to give up fees. The code says an error on the part of the code office, which this is not, or hardship to an owner-occupied property.
Thank you.
Which this is not.
So that is, okay, that is good. So if that's what the code says, when the code says hardship, did the code define hardship?
Of an owner-occupied property, financial hardship in dollars and cents.
That's what the code defines.
This is not an owner-occupied property. He has not shown financial hardship in dollars and cents.
Well, why is
So-
it owner occupied? You
And-
can have financial hardship because you have other properties, you have
Paul.
vacant people.
Stop,
Paul,
stop.
so-
Shut,
so
shut,
that's not in
everyone.
the code.
This
I'm
is-
telling you what's in the code.
Thank you for that. Okay, board, it is our job to discuss this. It is our job to make a decision.
I would second your motion.
So
think
I
we've
make
heard
a
both- We both heard both sides.
Yes,
Let's
we
vote.
have.
You wanna
Right,
make
so
the
let's do
motion?
it. I make a motion that we forgive this administrative fee, or that we approve the appeal based on compliance.
I second that motion and say if we can expressly, in addition to what the code officer has said, if we can have specific criteria that would guide us, that would also be helpful.
Would you like to second my motion?
I did
Oh,
already,
you
and I
did.
said I
Okay,
added to
all right,
that.
great.
Yes, thank you.
So now it's discussion time.
I think we've had it already. You know how I feel.
I do.
Anybody else?
Okay, if there's no further discussion, clerk,
Chair Mertic,
yes?
Commissioner Livermore,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikki Toby, Commissioner Hartley,
No.
Commissioner Boschnick.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next time, we might not be forgiving, because it's your job. Now it's your job to get that paper, or to make sure that it is in, or let us know. Okay, so,
Is it, just a question, because I have several properties, this is the first time I've had an issue with something not being turned in by an electrician or plumber before, so it was a learning thing for me. I thought they turned it in pretty much immediately.
it's always good to check.
Is it sufficient to say, hey, person's going to do the inspection this day, and then follow up? If there's a hiccup where a lot of these people are parents in this area that do this work, stuff comes up with their kids, family life happens for them, and maybe it takes them to get a little bit of time to get it in there, or something happened where they didn't turn it in on time, does that, hey, inspection was done on this day, help?
We have just voted.
Correct. No, I'm saying going forward in case I have.
So if you
Going
can send us
forward.
something in writing, an email that lets us know I've had this thing done and working on it, that helps.
Okay.
The second thing I would say is to hedge your bets, you got lots of time, you don't put yourself up against the 8 ball, get the thing so that you don't have this issue. I mean, these things take time, it requires,
You need to
But he
know,
makes points too.
the reason I've been so kind of objective to this is not the first incident of the electrical person that's supposed to do it. I think somebody ought to tell the public that the electrical people sometimes are quite irresponsible. Your guy was not nearly as irresponsible as some of the other people we've had. And you didn't know that, and that's why you got the appeal, and one crappy vote for me, because I knew I wasn't gonna win. I just did it. But
Okay,
the real solution is somebody has to inform you at the time, oh, and by the way, we have cases where the inspection is done and the forms aren't put in. You need to make sure that the forms are put in. That's the solution.
Okay.
And
Thank
Okay,
you very much.
let's move on.
Can I just add something to this? In my case, I had a heat inspection done, and the people assured me they would send it in. And I said, send me a copy, which they did. And then I got a fine saying the heating inspection wasn't done. And then, much later, I heard from the code enforcement officer, oh yeah, they did send it in, we filed it in the wrong place. That part of your problem is forgiven. But what I'm suggesting here is, it would be really nice if there was some way he or I could be notified that the thing came in. I mean,
We have, how many
You
rental
asked-
properties do we have in the city of Oneonta?
51%.
So here's the thing.
1,500.
well, it's just a.
As a
it's
property
a
owner,
communication problem.
you hire the third-party inspector. The inspection is yours. So you're entitled to get the inspection from them and turn it into us. I mean, it's a courtesy perhaps on their
I
part.
did that, but didn't know that that's the way it should work. In other words, I thought that the guy that did the inspection and.
That's a courtesy
informed me,
on-
And he did.
That's a courtesy on their part to submit it to our office. I mean, ultimately, it's the owner's responsibility to make sure that it finds its appropriate
Maybe there ought to
destination.
be some
Well,
communication that makes that clear.
We
That would
have
That would be between you and the
So
inspector.
we have a receipt, we have an email. I would say most of our documentation comes in via email now. You send it to that email, it auto replies, and it said, you have submitted this form. So anything that comes across that email, you get a receipt for
Are
it.
you saying that would come back to me?
Yes,
That would be great.
yep,
I have
that's
no-
why we set it up.
Okay, people, we need to keep moving.
It's on
So
our
we're
website.
now on 3840 Maple Street. Mr. Katan?
So, I had an issue with another property that I have, which I've been working on all summer, because I had vandalism from a homeless individual that gutted out a bunch of copper and wires.
You
and
have to
stuff.
speak up just a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
I had a homeless person that broke into my property on E Street, which created a lot of problems and got me very far behind schedule. I'm not in a position like some of the larger companies that have staff that do all this work. I do as much of it as I possibly can. I have a decent background in contracting work. But obviously, there's things like electrical inspections, to which I actually had one done on the property at E Street through BIM. And he said that he would help me out to get the other one, because I had received notice about 3840. And he said, just email me. So I have record on my phone of probably 10 emails or texts that have gone back and forth. And he's just a very busy individual. I know there are other ones that had bad experiences with Mark Hogue and will not deal with him. And the other ones are just very hard to get a hold of. I don't understand why we're at the onus of having to struggle with these companies. They are approved by somebody, I'm assuming code enforcement must approve these individuals. Why if we constantly have.
Actually, we have a board, we have a city
Okay.
board that
City board
that
that does.
approves them.
Why do we allow them to?
That's not
continue?
any of these guys.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
Why do we continue to allow it? It's very frustrating, being in the private sector, that this is not what I do for a profession. This is for my retirement, this is to put my 3 kids through their college education. And, these fees, they're, like you said, onerous. I mean, it's not like, if I don't pay my property taxes because I don't financially have the money to do it, I get a 1% fee. Reasonable, for delaying something. I understand the goal here is compliance, and I have a couple of properties, and I'm not a non-compliant person. So, they're very well aware, both these guys, I've seen numerous times over the summer come into the office, and they said, listen, I'm running behind. I don't know that I'm gonna get to this. I know I needed to replace some stairs. I told you, Andy, when you came out, I said, I gotta get these stairs done and those stairs. I know the things you want, but you also made comment that when you walked in the apartment, this is a really nice apartment. I have granite countertops, I take care of my properties. So, when you have tenants that vandalize, you go to court, you get a judgment, you never get paid.
we think the fees are high too, but we did not set them, and we are not a legislative body. My suggestion is go to the Common Council and tell them this, that you feel that way. We certainly have too. We think the fees are very high. They've gone up just recently, and that even harder. But our job is not to set the fees. Our job is to decide whether you were in compliance, which apparently, even according to your email, you're not. I mean, you haven't got it right, you haven't done them yet. So, I mean, we don't have the luxury of setting the fees. The Common Council does.
Let me come to your defense.
to the Common Council?
You make
Yeah,
several.
and it's not up to us, and we only decide whether you're in compliance or whether you're not in compliance, or whether the fees are appropriate because you're not in compliance, or whether they were calculated in error. But we don't have any authority to set the amount. We don't.
But you have the authority to.
To forgive, but I can't we can't if the facts are not appropriate for that. I mean, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the city
You made several
to
points.
apply, to hear your appeal and decide, are you in compliance? Did the code enforcement office err? Do you have documentation to show that you were in compliance even though the forms didn't come in? Those are the kind of things that we can make decisions on, not the fees are too high.
Not these particular gentlemen, but in general, they're there on behalf of us, right? They serve us, we pay their salaries, all of that stuff, right, from our taxpayer dollars, okay? So what about when they don't do the things that they say that they're going to do? What are we supposed
It's not up to the code enforcement office. They didn't set the fees either. It's the Common Council. Who's your alderman? Who's your councilman?
I don't have a council.
Oh, because you don't live in the city. Well, I would still contact the Common
Well, you have
Council.
a house and a ward, so you have a council member that you can go to, wherever your house is located. Where's your house located?
They're all over the place. Sixth Ward, I think, another one, I don't know what the other ward is.
So
Sixth Ward, all
this,
the cabs would be
I do
sitting
not
right here.
believe
It
Mr.
should be
Catan is in
chopped.
compliance. So he admits he didn't get any of the
But
inspections.
He's given us the same argument that we've heard from other people. He could not find an electrician, and when he does find an electrician, they're not very good. Did you notify the code enforcement people? that you-
He did.
Let me ask the question before you give me the answer. Did you notify the code enforcement people that you were continually having trouble finding an electrician? I think the code enforcement people actually understand that. And you ask, well, what can be done? And we've talked about, this commission's talked about this before, with some of the code enforcement people, and we don't know. So I'm willing to kind of say, maybe it's not your fault that you couldn't find an electrician. Now, it may be that you took a little too long, and you weren't aggressive enough, but we've heard the same story from other people, and I'm not quite sure why. You need to be penalized because you can't find a qualified electrician. There's a group of people who are certified, capable of doing this. And,
Yeah, I mean, there's a big group of people that can do the work, and then there's a smaller group of people that can inspect the work.
we understand.
Well,
And it's tough.
so
So
you
did-
received,
did
so
he
you received a
notify
letter
you?
from us in
Did he
July.
Did he notify code that he was having trouble finding electrical
He did.
inspection?
He did.
I'm asking the code people.
I mean, we go off documentation. So I
What
don't know which,
documentation?
documentation being an email. So in particular, electrical inspections and not electrical inspections, I take that back, electrical violations. We've heard multiple complaints about electricians being so backed up that they can't get to them. We have been telling everyone, send us an email. If we know that you're
Did
working
he send
on
you
it.
an email?
No.
I don't have documentation of that.
Oh, okay.
So my question was, you had trouble finding an electrical inspector. Did you contact the code enforcement people to indicate that that was a problem? Because you might have gotten some kind of a sympathy or
not
advice or something.
More
from
than
them. Did that
word of
happen?
mouth.
I
That's
did
the
not
problem.
have
We have
a
no evidence
verifiable-
of,
I had a
yeah.
conversation. I wanted to
So I
assume
make a
that I can
motion
walk
that
in
we
the office and
deny
have
this appeal.
conversations, and those conversations are, you know, noted or something. Do I have to take pictures and record
So-
things
No.
to prove that I
So,
submitted a document?
Charles.
I don't understand why.
Charles,
Oh, yes, you have to do that. You have to take pictures and record if you have to, or any proof you bring is sufficient. You have to.
Yeah,
It's
no, but I
absolute
mean,
proof.
if I drop off a paper to say, here, I did it like a week or 2 or 3 ago when I submitted these documents that they needed. So I submitted them in
If
the
we
day
have proof
after
of
I
that
got
right
it.
now, then there will be a different decision,
But
but
they
So-
don't give you a receipt.
We do. We
I
stamp
do.
it.
Okay,
I
wait,
stamp
stop.
it, and you can get a copy of anything you submit.
I think upon
And it's my,
acceptance.
Okay.
it's my responsibility. When you
Charles,
come into the bank,
Charles,
do you require,
Mark,
I give you a
there's a
receipt. I don't
motion
give
on
you
the table
option
to
of it.
deny
I
this
give
Did
you
you
appeal.
a
turn in a
document.
form that you said?
this is a discussion that can be had outside
Are
of
you
our,
penalized for something you turned in?
Well,
No, it's not, it's,
Okay.
it's that it's late, but why is it not my responsibility to prove that you're doing what you're doing? I think you should be issuing
so
receipts.
there's a motion on the table. Is there further discussion on your part or yours or yours or yours?
No.
On the motion, but no,
Okay,
Chair Martzick?
no? I mean, yes.
Well, you said
Didn't-
there was a motion, was it seconded?
Yes.
Yes.
For the audience, what was
Yes.
the motion?
To deny the appeal. Chair Martzick?
Yes.
Commissioner Livermore?
Yes.
Commissioner Nikki
Yes.
Commissioner Hartley?
No.
Commissioner Vashnik?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, sorry. I mean, you're coming to us with questions that we can't answer.
Right, now, once I've submitted this, which I've submitted 2 of the documents that they're looking for, but I'm still waiting for BIM, because it's coming out next week on Friday. I mean, I just don't know what it is that we're supposed to do. If I start the process too early, you only get credit for when it is that it's performed. So therefore, if I do this 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in advance, then I lose out on 6 months of time, right?
So just in
That's
this,
how the process
in this
Like,
example,
this is-
this property had a 9-year, which is, everything's a 3-year now. This
Okay, we're
property had a
coming back to
9-year
Mr.
electrical
Valenti.
certificate.
Yeah,
So at any point in that 9 years, you could have scheduled for,
Would you like to have this discussion
Sure.
outside?
I guess I don't understand
Would
how
you
I
like
can
to take it
schedule an
outside?
appointment for something from 9 years, and what is the value of half
Okay,
the
what is
numbers
Mr.
of dogs
Valenti's
we're talking? What are we
representative's name?
looking for?
couldn't theoretically have
Okay, Mr. Hunter, would you like to come up front?
Do in a year, in the coming year. I'd have to wait till the end of the meeting.
I don't have time for that.
This appeal is related to 4042 West Street.
Yes.
And, and Mr. Valenti, who is actually an LLC, this is owned by an LLC. So this property is not owned by Mr. Valenti himself, it's owned by what's called a limited liability corporation. And that limited liability corporation official Department of State address is 93 Main Street. The address that we had for him was the property use certification that he submitted. What date did we get the property use that listed Market Street?
October 4th, 2024.
So, Market Street.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Market Street one. That was November 22nd, 2019.
So in 2019, Mr. Valenti, Ford and Hill Holdings LLC, notified the code enforcement office that their address was 10 Market Street, not the address that was listed with the Department of State, which was 93 Main Street. So Mr. Valenti made no other submittals giving us a new address. And with an LLC, it has to be, I mean, either he has to let us know or we send it to the address that is on file with that LLC. So that's his appeal, is that he didn't get it because he changed his address, but he never let us know.
Right.
Okay, so,
How is that an appeal?
I guess just asking for leniency in regards to the knowledge that, rather lack of knowledge that we had, that we still had the old office address in code enforcement, for that property, because we have, Joe has, multiple other properties as well. And, as far as I'm aware, I believe, and actually after this had happened, went in and made sure that our new office address was what they had, for all the properties. Just, we were unaware that that property was, just had been in previously.
so Mr. Valente lives in Lawrence? That's his
No,
new
that's
post
just our-
office box?
That's the mailing address, that's the mailing address for all the business mail.
Okay, since what day?
That's PO box number, 20 years.
But he never let us know. I mean, the LLC,
Yeah, I understand that it's complicated, but with the money properties that we do have in multiple LLCs and such, we have had a number of addresses over time. And so, as far as I'm aware, all of them have been cleared up to make sure that they're current addresses that we have. Whether it be my office address, which is on Main Street, or the PO box number here. But previously, he used to also get mail at the other building, which he actually owned at that time, at 10 Market Street, which had since been sold. He used to also
So-
get mail at that location too.
the claim that Mr. Valente, that we didn't have the correct address, seems to me kind of bogus, because you've had so many different addresses, and all we have is what you have on file, which is we sent it to the correct address.
The correct address that you have on file. That
Okay,
is correct.
so,
You have to understand, your
So,
argument is, well,
we
we have so many
can't be-
properties. What that means is you should know these things.
No,
The
that's actually
city
that's not my argument whatsoever.
That's what you said. We have a lot of properties, we have lots of different addresses. What that means to me is you've had a lot of properties over the years. You probably should know these things. You should know that when the city tries to contact you, they should have the correct address.
What is it?
okay, these two.
I guess I'm just laying out the facts of the, we were unaware of this situation. It arose, I handled it the day that I actually received the mail, not realizing that we were not in compliance, not realizing that administrative fees were starting to be applied as of, I think it was like March or something like that. I don't know for sure, maybe it was in May, I think it was in M. At the day I received the mail, I went and handled it with code enforcement, filed all of the paperwork that we could, scheduled all the appointments for inspections. And so, I guess I don't really have specifically an argument to say, hey, this is why. I get it, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, this is,
Your argument right at the beginning
this
was-
shows that whoever was at 10 Market Street, Suite 3, got it.
Right, this was July, right?
Do you mind reading the name on that?
That's just the
It says
postmark.
Joe Valente.
That's just the postmark.
Oh, that's the
That's a postmark.
receipt.
Oh, okay.
But we do have a tracking number, and it was hand delivered to somebody at that address. I don't know who would have accepted it, but.
I guess that would have been Spalding Apartments,
Okay.
but.
So that just means that actually the letter in July saying that these were due in September, or August and September, was actually received.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Not by myself or anyone who works with us, but it was.
Your argument is somehow you're not responsible for the fact that we had the wrong address. That's the first thing you said, we didn't get it. Why didn't you get it? Because you didn't give the city the correct address.
I understand that.
I think I've moved to and I hope you understand why we're doing this.
I second that.
okay, so,
I think it's very ironic
motion?
considering the things that you
Oh.
have already heard here and the
We're
level
ready to
of-
vote.
The level of belligerence that you've already experienced
do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Mertzick?
Yes.
Commissioner Livermore?
Yes.
Commissioner Nickitobi? Commissioner Hartley?
Yes.
Commissioner Boschnick?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, so now we're on to the Dorias.
Are you ready
Do you
for a
have a
vote?
copy of the original?
No, I wasn't told that that was important. I don't know what that proves, other than that she filled it out and didn't send it in. It was never signed and sent in.
You know,
So
we have to base it on documentation. You know, you can say we were going to, we had it, we were,
I hear what you're saying, but essentially there is no documentation. It wasn't sent in. You know what I mean? We didn't.
yeah, okay, so that
We
means,
didn't do this, and we're admitting that we didn't do this. She had shoulder surgery at the time. I emailed Mr. Yearly and told him that, and he graciously gave me some slack in terms of the time frame to do this, you know, so.
oh, well, we don't have any record of that, so why don't you, what?
What is this for? You're requesting an extension on a housing inspection?
Yeah.
We didn't receive that in our packet. No one told us that.
It's for property use.
It's for property use form.
This is a different
I'm
form.
not understanding what's important, you know what I mean, in terms of.
It's not for housing inspection.
Right.
I'm not contesting that I did
This is for property use. He gave him an extension on the housing inspection.
Oh,
You're
the
requesting an
inspection,
extension for a housing
oh,
inspection, that's
oh,
all.
but not for, okay.
But anyway, you know, the reason that the amount in here is high is because at first, it seemed like we hadn't done the heating inspection or the form. And then it was discovered later the heating inspection was done and was sent in. And it is only is this property use certificate form that's in question. We're not saying anything other than she thought I sent it, I thought she sent it.
What we have, and I couldn't find it because we didn't know it was necessary, was a copy of the form, not the form itself.
Not the form itself.
I make a copy when I do the form, and he has a folder where he keeps everything that we've lost.
Well, I mean, as you heard,
If we had not sent it, likely it would be in the folder, and it's not, just the copy's in the folder. And I need to locate the copy for you.
I don't think,
And he believes maybe we did err.
I think we erred. I'm not trying to put this blame on anybody else. She thought I sent it in, I thought she sent it in, it didn't come in. And my only argument here is we've complied with all these other inspections. In good faith, we were trying to do the right thing, we made a mistake. Our mistake really isn't much different than the one Code made when they put our heating inspection thing in the wrong folder. It's the same kind of human snafu. And that's my only appeal here. In other words, this is a very stiff fine for a one-page form in a property that hadn't been sold or changed in the last 20 years. I would have loved it if I'd have gotten a little email bump that said, hey, you're all good except for, but that didn't happen. So I didn't know the form wasn't in. But I'm not trying to say we're right. We're not. This is our mistake.
and unfortunately, if we forgive you, we forgive everyone. Because everyone, you know, Mr. Catan felt bereaved, and the fines are high. We think so too, but they are to get the I mean, I agree, the property use form is probably the most innocuous one but it does change. You know, you could have made a change with the property use and letting us know with that, or you could be, I mean, it's required to be in, you received a letter, it said it had to be in by a certain date, it wasn't in by that date.
Has it been turned in?
Pardon?
Has it been turned in?
It has been turned in, but it was turned in after they received the invoice for the
That was the first
year-end
time I realized
closeout.
we hadn't done it though. I mean, that's,
Right.
Well, I think what you say is
Yeah.
very reasonable, but we're stuck with the same kind of thing we always
Right, I mean, they're all the same,
are.
and they didn't get it until.
A lot of people agree that the fees are very high, and you've heard us,
he said you could reduce the fee.
no, No.
Yes, it is.
For certain
Property use
reasons,
certification.
Mr. German, how can we
I just said it was a 6-foot council, that's all.
Let's, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, but I don't see, so, someone wanna make a motion?
Is there any way this fee can be reduced?
Well, I mean, the argument earlier was if you're looking for compliance, that's what this is about.
It is,
Individuals comply,
it is.
so.
I make a motion that we deny this appeal. I feel bad about it, but I don't see how we can make any other decision.
I would, I don't know, I would think we should reduce it because it's compliance, reducing because compliance is the goal. and
I don't
just-
think we have any basis for reducing.
But I would,
But whatever, so you know how to vote.
Is there a way
I
for
think your
me-
motion would be.
Do I have a second?
I don't understand. It seems that previously you argued that, well, what we're here to is to make sure the compliance was done, not the compliance was done on time. He's complied eventually.
We agree.
Eventually, but
The
that's
in
why
the
this is
previous
such a
case-
hard one, because this is something that the property owner can do the day they get the letter from us. All they have to do is fill out the form and send it in, done.
He made a mistake, but he eventually complied.
Eventually, but he didn't comply. Mr. Garrett complied before the date and has documentation that they do not have documentation that they complied before the date.
We complied when we found out we were in.
Okay, I
Well,
know.
I
I
know,
know,
but
but
you should have called the code enforcement. It's so easy and just say, we didn't get the property use form, did you get it?
We found out we had screwed up.
Yeah,
We
that's,
got
I know,
fined.
that's,
You know what I mean? If I'd
I
got
know.
an email
I
a
know.
month earlier saying
My
enforce
suggestion
letter,
is the code enforcement office once a month should send out a nixle that says, landlords, get your paperwork in. Landlords, get your paperwork in. It
Drop it
won't,
out.
there's no staff time required, and it's, you know, we-
I'm gonna disagree with that, there is staff time that's required for that, and I think that's outside their scope of doing stuff.
Really?
And I will go to the city administrator and I will sit there as a legislator saying, I don't think that that's their
well, how can we have nixles about every other thing in the world? And
Nixles isn't supposed to be emergency and to stay away from certain areas or let people know what is going on to try to avoid an area and stuff like that. It's not used for paperwork purposes.
My question is when does a property owner that's owned a property for 20 years need a reminder of periodic?
I'm with you on that.
But
I think,
You just used the thing about compliance, and I gotta agree with Mr. Hartley over here. If you're gonna use compliance as the thing, they complied, it doesn't matter when they complied.
Exactly.
It sat there and said, as long as they comply. We want the compliance over the enforcement.
Thank
They complied, they sat there with the paperwork, and they complied. So you just answered your own question like 4 times. That's
but
what
they
compliance
didn't
is.
comply with,
But they did comply because they sat there and they got the paperwork in. If you're gonna use it.
they didn't get,
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
He just
they
asked
got
that
it in-
question, he said yes, it's
they
in.
got it in late.
It doesn't matter, they still complied, they got it in, that was
That's
what
what
they
I'm
wanted,
thinking.
they
No,
got the
but-
paperwork in. I'm just telling you, you're going against your own argument.
No, I'm not.
You are.
No,
We can reduce it.
because compliance
And I'll
compliance
go up
has,
to the council and I'll sit there and say, we do away with all the administrative fees, don't worry about it, everybody can have their free-for-all. That's what this is coming down to.
I think
No,
there's a
it isn't.
distinction between-
Scott, it isn't at all. The compliance means
Means they got in and
a
complied with what
third,
the
no,
codes
a
want.
third party came in and did the inspection.
No,
That's
not what it means.
compliance.
It's not what it means.
I do think there's a distinction between the paper that you
Which
can.
is why I said we
you
should
can
have
I'm
do
sorry.
on your own,
guidelines.
Okay,
and
let's,
something that
let's,
requires a third party
let's vote.
inspector.
That's why I'm
I need a
thinking
second.
There is a difference.
we need a second.
But
What is the motion to deny?
It's your motion to deny.
Okay, do I need a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
I think,
Okay,
I think you have a point, and I think you have a point. If we start making exceptions then all of a sudden, everything, well, I didn't get the paperwork, do you have
That's
any
why
proof
we
of
should
that?
reduce it.
Well, you get off the hook. The other thing is, that you're suggesting we send out email, well, that just enables other people to use that as an excuse that, well, I didn't get the email, and that's why I didn't comply. It's not helpful, I understand the reasoning behind it, but it makes the individual property owner less responsible. Oh, well, you should have sent me the email telling me, we sent you a letter telling you that you're gonna have heavy fines to start with. So in some sense, I agree with everybody here, and this is gonna be a tough one for me to vote on. I don't wanna punish Mr.
So we can go in between, agree to the motion, but we could reduce it, that would also be good. He complied and we can reduce it, so we make sure that every other person is cautioned, and next time we won't have one again. If
But
there's a
I-
level of compliance, we could just reduce the
I don't
level.
think we
Okay,
can
well-
reduce it right now. And we don't have the power, we can suggest to city council that they have
Okay,
some kind of
sure.
provision for us to have the leniency to reduce it in certain cases, so it's not a $2,000 penalty for a $100 mistake. But we don't have any power over that.
We can suggest, I would agree that we suggest to do.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are all good thoughts.
If I could ask for any leniency, and we'll accept whatever you decide, our bill came double fined for, and heart attack time, for the fact that the city lost the one form, the more important form, and we were still being fined for that. If we can understand that the city made a mistake, couldn't we be provided a little leniency for the fact that we made the same kind of mistake?
There's no penalty though for that. When we located the form, we eliminated the fine for that form.
Exactly. We
Let's-
understand that.
Is this correct here? It's $2,100 for not filling out that one form?
So the accrual rate is $250 for the first day and $10 for each subsequent day.
I know, we think
But
they're high, but
when you receive the letter, you have 60 days to comply. And that form you can fill out and email us or bring down to our office that same day that you received the letter. So
let's vote.
that's the process that we have.
Chair Mertzick?
Yes.
And then the fine's gone if you
Commissioner
comply within
Livermore?
24 hours?
No, you have 60 days to meet all of those requirements.
No.
Or
Commissioner Nikki Toby?
inform our office of some difficulty that you aren't, that precludes you from
Commissioner
satisfying
Hartley?
those requirements. So
What's
60
the
days
motion
from
to deny?
To deny.
Motions to deny.
the mailing date of the letter.
Commissioner Boschnick?
So the motion is to deny.
Correct.
So I'll vote to deny.
Passes.
I'm sorry, but
We have good
when the
arguments.
city made their
You should
mistake,
understand that we're stuck.
yeah, when the city made their mistake, they rectified their mistake. And you were not charged. It was called back.
By that argument, when we realized our mistake, we rectified our mistake and filled out the form. But it doesn't work the other way.
No, because you got the letter saying it had to be in on a certain day, and we can't, otherwise, everyone who says, oh, we just didn't get it in, will be forgiven. And you've heard a lot of that today. And
It's the grade school argument.
we still have
If we
one
let
item
you do
before
it,
us.
Everybody else won't want to do
So
it.
let's
And
move on
unfortunately,
to
it's not a very good-
unsafe
No, and the reason you have a board like this is to
at
humanize the situation.
27.
Linden, 27 Linden Avenue. You have photographs attached to the end of your agenda. Normally, when we get an unsafe, we have a notice from you as to what the criteria are. We would appreciate that in the future, because we're not engineers, but I think we'll be able to make it through this time. So we have a 6-bay garage at Linden Avenue. You have photographs there. The Code Enforcement Office would like us to consider agreeing with their determination that this building is unsafe. Under Chapter 92, we act as a quasi-judicial board, and we determine based on recommendations from the Code Enforcement Office whether it fits under the criteria listed under 92.1. It appears that C, those which have improperly distributed loads upon the floors or roofs, or in which the same are overloaded or have insufficient strength to be reasonably safe for the purpose used, is appropriate in this property. D, those which have been damaged by fire, wind, or other causes, so have become dangerous to life, safety, morals, or general welfare of the occupants or the people of the city of Oneonta. This certainly isn't unsanitary, because I don't believe it's filled with any kind of toxic substances.
I don't do poke around inside.
We don't really have to worry about sanitation facilities or egress in case of fire, since it's not a residential property. We could consider, so that's C, D. We could consider those which have parts which are so attached that they may fall and injure members of the public or property.
You'd have to be inside if the roof falls in, you have to be inside the garage.
Yeah, it's just the garage, and there aren't any vehicles stored within, so.
Well, you mentioned that there might be something falling to be a danger to the public.
Right.
Only if the public is inside.
Right, that's why H likely applies.
Okay.
There aren't any other, the fact that one of the doors is missing so that there's access to the property from those members of the public or whatever that could be damaged. So based on C, D, and H, and that would be I, those which because of their condition are unsafe, unsanitary, or dangerous to health, moral safety, or general welfare of the people of the city. Based on that, I would make a motion that we declare this property unsafe.
Discussion after this. So I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
So is the purpose of that to facilitate the repairs of this?
Okay, so under the section 2 of chapter 92, if we determine that something is unsafe based on the criteria, we then can issue an order of various magnitudes. So we can order, usually we order it secured, so members of the public can't be injured. So that doorway has to be somehow blockaded so no one can get inside. We can order it repaired, because overall the structure appears to be fairly okay. It's just it has a bad roof, and it isn't completely closed to the public. So we have choices, and so if we vote for unsafe, then we can, under the recommendation of the Code Enforcement Office, make certain requirements of the owners of this property to stop it from being unsafe. So it's kind of a two-part process.
In the more egregious cases, we can order demolished immediately.
We could.
Well, you didn't mention that's
Well, that's one of the criteria. So the criteria are vacated, repaired, demolished. And demolished only if more than 50% of the property is unsafe.
It doesn't look unsafe other than
Mark.
the one
Pardon
part
me?
of the roof.
So, there was,
I don't know why
It's
that
not
wasn't
seen
included.
inside, so how do we determine what's
this
unsafe
letter was
without
mailed to
seeing
the
inside?
owner, so I don't.
The structure is okay, like you said, the only problem is with this part of the roof and an open
No way we
door
ask,
that.
what's it look like inside?
Exactly.
Okay, so
There's
let
nothing
them answer.
that
to
doesn't,
say unsafe
that
without
doesn't
seeing inside.
indicate criteria.
So I sent them a letter in July that said that your roof is damaged and needs to be repaired. And gave them 30 days to either come up with a plan, right? So an exterior maintenance violation of city code.
Okay,
in
Doesn't look
July,
unsafe to me,
and when they didn't
enough to
they
get.
didn't take any action, they thought they might wanna tear it down, but I don't think the building needs to be torn down, it just needs to be repaired.
So that's why this is necessary to force some action?
Exactly, they've taken no action since July to repair the
Extend the
building.
days and let's come back on this. It doesn't look unsafe, it looks strong, like she said, and just one portion of six, door, one portion, not two, of that roof, and then we haven't seen the inside. I don't think it would be fair or just to give that decision.
Can you tell us?
Let's table it for next
Have
time
you
and
seen
see the
inside?
inside, and
What-
let's
what-
see.
What
the
is inside?
So
We
it's,
hear that there's
it's
an
six bay garage, separated by wooden
What
wall
damage is inside?
partitions. The building is in decent shape except for the roof. If the roof isn't repaired.
That's
and the
not
fact that one door is
Well,
still open.
we're trying to find out. So the roof isn't a problem, and apparently Margaret seems to think that the public could wander in there because there's an opening.
That's a potential hazard, I mean, for sure.
But that is the case.
But they contacted them in July, and nothing's been done, right?
I'm just trying to figure out how egregious this thing is. So the roof needs to be repaired. It looks like part of the roof can fall down if you had a child standing underneath it, and if you had a child brave enough to go in through the opening that's there. So I think that's probably an endanger to the public. I don't think it needs to be torn down. I think
No.
somebody
Is
needs
the
to
roof
repair
on
it.
the
No.
opening or the
I
closed?
don't believe it needs to be torn
No,
down
same
either.
interpretation.
I don't think we ought to order it torn down.
What we have is
They
a
don't
building-
want it torn down.
Right.
That open place, what is the square meter of the open place? What is inside? It could not harm the child if the child goes there. If there's an opening under that, the opening seems to, could we get closer please? The opening seems to be on number 1, 2, 3. If the opening is under the opened door, or there's some way a child can go up, there's no way anybody could go up there. The opening, just give them an extension of time and come back, let's come back and see this. It doesn't.
Let's find out. If you can come in through the opening, can you get to the point which is underneath the roof?
So, I mean, presumably, but all of this stuff is not really what's in question. I mean, they have multiple code violations, which is they're not maintaining their property. They've been issued a notice of violation for not meeting the code, and they have taken no action. The objective is to get them to take action to repair their building. Is that within the purview of this board?
Right,
Or
that's what this is
No.
all about.
It is, but I'm just saying that, the roof, which is the problem, because we all agree that the structure is okay, and we need to see inside if it's unsafe to make any, I need to see that.
there are
But
multiple
if you see
locations.
the opening is on 1, 2, 3, and the third place is already closed. The opening is not on the open door, it's, the
I mean,
opening of the roof is on,
It might be more appropriate for you to have brought this to us as a blighted property. But on the other hand, we're here now, talking about whether this, let's decide, first of all, whether it meets the criteria of being unsafe. That's number
it
one,
doesn't meet the criteria of being unsafe for me.
okay? So we can vote on whether it meets the criteria of being unsafe.
And that's what you
Yes,
figure out.
yes. That's the motion on, we haven't talked about remedy, we've only talked about whether we're gonna designate it unsafe.
If I see the inside, I'll be able to determine that for sure. This to
Okay.
me, just that part of the roof doesn't look unsafe to me.
Okay,
Chair Mertic,
yes,
Commissioner Livermore,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikki Toby,
No.
Commissioner Hartley,
Yes.
Commissioner Boschnick.
Yes.
okay. So now we're on to the remedy. And again, under chapter 92, it says we have three choices. We can order it vacated, which there's nobody living there. We can order it repaired, or we can order it, I don't think it meets the standard of being demolished, because it's not more than 50% damaged or decayed from its original value or structure. So I make a motion that we order it repaired, and that we order it secured so that the public can't get into it.
Do you have a timeline for either of those?
Pardon me?
Do you want a timeline on either of those?
Oh, yes.
Before the end of the summer.
Secured within 10 days, and repaired, well, the problem is that we're in winter.
Exactly. I thought, yeah.
On a timeline to be approved by code enforcement?
Pardon me?
On a timeline to be approved by code enforcement?
July.
Yes, yes, that's a good one. And timeline to be approved by the code enforcement office. that takes us off the hook a little bit. But secure it immediately.
Immediately, not the
Within
10
Okay,
days.
10 days.
thank you. Okay, so that's a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Charles, okay. Further discussion? Any other criteria that we want to add to this? Okay,
Chair Martzick,
yes.
Commissioner Livermore,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikki Tobey,
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Bosser.
All right, thank you all.
I would like to talk about the issue of the time.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to do our minutes.
Nope. We're not.
Oh, we
doing
did,
that.
okay, all right.
The issue of, I sent an email that, about the timing, if we could talk about it, the timing that.
Ari,
since-
pick up your son at school early and take him home. Don't wait for the bus.
I have
and-
other things to do at that time.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but this is when the meeting is. The rest of the board wants that, the code enforcement office wants it, the clerk's office wants it. This is when the board, when I'm not chair anymore, you can try again, but this is when it is.
Can it be on the record at least that I've made that appeal several times? Thank you.
I mean, we'll be voting on chair again in January. If, you know, this is when it is.